Yeah, the part that takes the longest for these is doing the research.
Oh yeah,
Doing that because I want to get it right, you know.
sure.
Um, but
Otherwise, you'd be just as bad as the meme people.
that's right. That is right. Hello, everybody, and thank you all so much for listening to the Meaningless podcast. Uh, Now, we have covered some right wing memes,
Mhm.
and I like full disclosure, I am pretty left leaning, and that's obvious in my
Yeah.
my podcast. But and it's obvious in my opinions and my behavior. Like I'm obviously a left leaning person, um, but that doesn't mean that the left doesn't spread bullshit.
Oh yeah.
So we are going to be covering a left wing meme. Now this doesn't mean that it's believed by everybody on the left. So if you're a left wing person, say, "Well, I don't believe that." Like, I'm not saying everybody does. I'm saying that the people who are sharing this tend to be left wing people.
Right.
But so
Correct.
it's probably no doubt in anybody's mind that I'm left leaning.
Yeah.
But I do want to cover the left as well. So, Bobby, I want you to look at this meme, explain to me what you're seeing, and read what the words are in the white area there.
Okay. Okay. So we got a picture. Martin Luther King Jr. in a hospital bed here. He's got some. Looks like he's got a tube in his nose. And at the top in the white it says fact. MLK did not die from the bullet that shot him. He was smothered by someone in the hospital and died there. Coretta Scott King sued the state and won. Also in 1999, the U.S. government was found guilty in the court of law for conspiring to kill him. Hang on. Why didn't they teach us this in school?
All right. So, we're going to go over this meme here. Now, the suggestion made by the photo in the meme is that Martin Luther King was clearly alive and conscious when he arrived at the hospital after the assassination attempt on him in 1968. So, I'm not going to do a full background on Martin Luther King because most listeners are going to know exactly who he was. But I'll just do a brief rundown. He was an activist, and in fact, was the most famous and foremost activist and leader during the civil rights movement. He invoked the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, utilized passive resistance, taught nonviolence, and was absolutely key to the success of the civil rights movement. He was also not wanting to be the face of the civil rights movement. He was a very reluctant leader, but because he knew that he was putting himself into danger and had expressed his stress over that multiple times. And he also, though, expressed that his conscience would not allow him to refuse the role. As a great orator and a very smart and resilient person, he had to accept the fact that the movement needed him in order to move forward. That doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't have stepped up as leader, but the fact that he was so incredibly effective made him pretty vital to the civil rights movement. So let's dip into the meme for a little bit. So it starts in all caps with the word fact. So this meme claims to be a statement of truth. And there are a number of claims in this meme that we can address. The first three are the sentences that read, MLK did not die from the bullet that shot him. He was suffocated by someone at the hospital and died there. If this is true, this has huge implications regarding his death.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that James Earl Ray, the accused assassin, did not in fact successfully kill King, but that his actual assassin was somebody at the hospital. You can already feel suspect about this claim because the statements are very vague when it refers to, quote, someone at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was a Twitter post, so being vague doesn't mean it's not true by default. It could be that the poster either doesn't know all the details or it's worded in such a way to fit the character limit for Twitter. Very quick tangent on the character limit. This is just something I found funny, so I've posted this post from Stephen King in here. It says so like this was right after they've raised the character limit to 280 characters.
Okay.
It used to be fewer, and but Stephen King, all he posted was 280 characters. Fuck that. That's all it says. It made me chuckle. I thought that was good. Anyway, so moving on. The someone at the hospital vague phrase would seem to suggest that people are making this claim without knowing who the person accused was. But they do actually have a name associated with this claim. That person's name is Dr. Green Bland, the chief neurosurgeon at St. Joseph Hospital, Memphis, where King was taken after he was shot. There is so much more detail here than what a meme can provide.
Yep.
There have been a lot of Twitter and Facebook posts about this, of course, because if it is true, it's certainly a revelation, to say the least. But where did this come from, and why is it being spread now? So I have a clip here to show you.
So like I said, I spoke to Dr. Pepper earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow.
He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken to the St. Joseph's Hospital, and he was killed in the emergency room of St. Joseph's Hospital by the chief of neurosurgery, Dr. Green Bland, who came in when they were all working on him in the emergency room, and he said, "Get out of here, let that die." And as they moved out of the room, the last one out was a surgical nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, and when she heard them gathering up spit in their lungs to spit on Martin's body lying on a bed there, then she saw Dr. Bland take the catheters out of Martin's body and take the pillow from under his head and put it over his face and suffocate him. And that's how Martin King died. That's how he was really assassinated. Now, he might have died anyway from the bullet wounds, but he didn't. He was still alive and still breathing. The chief neurosurgeon, he intervened, and he made sure that death would result.
Wow.
Right? My jaw was on the floor. Now, Dr. Pepper knows this because the son of the nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, who died, but before she died told her family, the son of this nurse told Dr. Pepper under oath. And when Dr. Pepper confronted a member of the Dixie Mafia, he said, yes, this happened, and actually that the chief of surgery was their family doctor, and that 3 weeks before the assassination, he visited them and said, hey, if the bullet doesn't kill him, make sure he goes to St. Joseph's, because we will make sure that he dies. Now, let's talk about this case, okay? This was the civil suit in 1999 where Pepper represented the King family, and that really made the family feel like they had closure, and like I said, it was the only trial ever held. The Memphis jury in this case decided that local, state, and federal governments were liable for King's death, and that this was a real conspiracy, a conspiracy between the U.S. military, the Memphis PD, and Dixie Mafia, these crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee.
This is just for the audience.
Right.
This is a civil case that was brought, much like the O.J. case.
Right, where a jury
they couldn't find him guilty here, but finally when a civil jury heard it, they came out with a
It was the only trial, yes, and there was 30 days of trial, and over 70 witnesses were heard. And Dr. Pepper told me earlier today that it took the jury less than an hour to decide after these 30 days
that this
of
was
trials.
a true conspiracy.
Correct.
Where others may have been involved.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man, and that he was unwittingly, unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this, even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot.
Okay, so a few things we can break down here. This video is obviously a well-funded news production.
Yeah.
It was, had the moving cameras on the reels and all that. It was very high quality news cast. So it's very well produced. There are a few things though that should always be considered when hearing information like this, because it's a fairly extraordinary claim, and it could be dangerous to take a claim like this just at face value.
Yeah.
So let's start with my first concern, and that was, what news outlet is this? You have some that have a rough track record, some places that call themselves news outlets, or even are considered news outlets that do have a fairly bad track record in terms of spreading information that does not turn out to be true.
Right.
So like places like InfoWars and OAN, like these networks that produce segments that sometimes they don't even tell a lie in the segment, but what they're saying is what they're making a suggestion through the things that they're saying, trying to spread an idea that supports their side without it actually being based thoroughly in fact. So I want you to guess, where did this come from? What kind of source do you think this came from?
I don't know. That's actually what I was going to ask. I was like, where are they getting this information?
Yeah. So this clip was taken from a broadcast on RT, the Russian state-run media outlet.
Russian?
Yeah, Russian state-funded media was where this clip was taken from.
Okay.
So the posts that share this clip, the clip itself and the meme I showed you, all claim that King was alive at the hospital and his actual cause of death was him being suffocated. But let me play the last few seconds of this news clip, something that you may have missed. Something that
I might have been distracted by the Dr. Pepper thing.
And we'll talk about that too. We're going to talk about Dr. Pepper. That's
Yeah.
I
didn't know he had any say over medical stuff.
I know
thought it was all soda.
I know you're drinking Pepsi today, but we'll talk about Dr. Pepper. But listen to the last part, the last little part of this clip here.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man and that he was unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this, even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot.
Notice something odd about that?
I'm not sure what you're getting at.
So, the suggestions from the post, the clip itself, the memes, was that King was alive at the hospital and his actual cause of death was him being suffocated.
Oh, but okay.
What does she mean, fatal shot?
Yeah. No.
So, I thought he was suffocated. But no, it was a fatal shot. So, according to these claims, not only was King suffocated to death, he was also shot to death by someone else other than the accused assassin, James Earl Ray, who was presumably being framed.
Okay.
So in the clip alone, it contradicts itself. Like that there, like in some people may argue that she misspoke. You could also argue that the shot might have still been lethal, but like the suffocating of him was just to make sure. It's still an odd choice of words from a reporter who assumably is saying something that she sincerely believes.
Yeah.
You would think that she would parse her words more carefully with an extraordinary claim like this if she sincerely believed it to be true. That's somewhat speculation on my end, but I think the reasoning is fairly sound. So we should probably dig a little deeper. Just because this clip comes from a media source that has been shown, especially in recent years, to have an incentive to sow unrest in the United States. Just because it also has been shown to have an anti-left bias. Just because the source has also been shown countless times to be spreading misinformation. Just because this source has been shown to intentionally spread misinformation for the left to grasp onto in order to make them look discredited later on, doesn't necessarily mean they're lying about this.
Right.
But those are a lot of reasons to maybe not trust it. Or at least dig into the information a little further. In this clip here, the recorded voice we heard is a clip named William Francis Pepper, the man who the woman keeps referring to as Dr. Pepper. He claims to have been friends with King during the last year of his life and often refers to himself as the King family's lawyer. Mm-hmm. This sort of brings us to the next claim in the meme. It says that, quote, Coretta Scott King sued the state and won. Also, in 1999, the U.S. government was found guilty in the court of law for conspiring to kill him. The first thing that I'm going to say is that there's no doubt in my mind that there were members of the U.S. government who wanted King dead. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh, yeah.
That is certainly true. He was an incredible leader and was pushing for major political and legal changes. To say that he didn't have enemies in the government would be an ignorant claim. So I'm not denying that fact. And in fact, you don't have to go very far to see parts of his movement being literally attacked by police, and like sprayed with hoses and beat up in cafes, and the police aren't doing anything about it. Like, you don't have to go very far to find that evidence. But when it comes to a literal claim of conspiracy, I want to see evidence. So that's why I kept digging into this. So, as I mentioned before, William Francis Pepper claimed to be friends with King during the last year of his life, and that he represents the King family as their lawyer. Accordingly, as a friend and legal counsel, he would be hugely incentivized to look out for the best interest of the King family, and this would include knowing the truth behind who assassinated him, so that real justice can take place. Now, there might be a little problem, just a little slight problem, maybe like a kind of a tiny little minuscule, probably doesn't even matter that much. I don't even know why I'm mentioning it. Just a little possible conflict of interest type situation. Just it's almost nothing. So William Francis Pepper was actually known to be with King during the last year of his life. That is true.
Okay.
He is a lawyer, and in fact, he is a human rights lawyer. So, good news all around, right?
Sure. Yeah,
right?
sounds
Case
good.
closed. We're done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's move on.
That's literally the next thing in my. It literally says nothing to see here. Let's move on. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that tiny little, very tiny, minuscule. And the reason why I forgot is because it really doesn't matter all that much. Some people might think this is a big deal, but it totally isn't. Can you guess who Dr. Pepper famously represented as an attorney?
Oh. No, who?
James Earl Ray, the accused assassin of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Just a minor conflict of interest there.
I mean, I say it's a tiny, maybe littlest possibility of conflict of interest because, I mean, why would the attorney of the accused assassin want to push a narrative that his client wasn't the assassin? That would be silly. Why would he want to do that? But, all that being said, maybe Dr. Pepper is representing the King family and the accused assassin in a fight against a bigger evil, the U.S. government. Now, I've already made it clear in a past episode that I'm often not a fan of the government. And I would not be surprised at all if it turned out that some government leaders had actually had discussions of getting rid of King somehow.
Yeah.
I would not doubt that at all. As Tucker Carlson may put it, he was as Tucker Carlson might say about any black outspoken person, he was uppity. So, isn't that interesting how, like, now that nobody wants to hear the N-word, like, coming from white people, they come up with other words to just kind of replace, like thug or uppity, like stuff like that. It's like, there's always, it's a dog whistle for people, so they can say, oh, I didn't say anything. I just said uppity. A white person could be uppity. It's like, nah, we know what you mean. Like, we know exactly what you mean. But the point there is that, there probably were people in the government who saw Dr. Martin Luther King as a dangerous person, and he was to the status quo. He threatened the ridiculously exacerbated unbalance of power white people had, in many ways still do, over the black population. And at that time, that power was explicitly legally sanctioned. And it wasn't that long ago. We've all met people who were alive while black people were treated by the rule of law differently, expressly because they were black. And there were literal laws saying that black people can't use certain water fountains. Black people can't do this, they can't do that, but white people can. It's like, if a white person went over, they might parse their language and say, well, we're keeping both of them separate. No, if a white person went into a black neighborhood and started using their shit, nobody would say a word. But if a black person shows up in the white neighborhood filled with police,
Oh, yeah.
And so, and still today, there are laws on the books they're used for the same purpose, but it's hidden in like legal language and vague rhetoric to pretend that racism isn't a factor. So it's without a doubt that people are still treated unfairly today. Now, an important question, did the bullet kill Martin Luther King? We have statements from a historian and Dr. King's close friends. So first we'll go with the historian. So we got Jason Sokol of the University of New Hampshire. He's a researcher and author of a book called The Heavens Might Crack, The Death and Legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. He said in response to an inquiry from USA Today, King was murdered by a gunman. There is no evidence whatsoever to support the other stories you mention. So this is an interesting quote for a couple of reasons, and one is like he very flatly says King died from being shot.
Yeah.
It comes from a guy who very thoroughly researched the situation, and the way he refers to these conspiracy theories, he refers to them as the other stories you mention. You would think that as a person who very thoroughly researched the situation, he would be aware of these conspiracy theories. But they actually didn't show up until somewhat recently.
Oh, okay.
So, so if you were to research that actual time period, nobody was saying these things.
Yeah.
It later on became a conspiracy. Then we have Reverend Ralph Abernathy, which was one of MLK's closest friends, and he was also a member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He was accompanying King when he was shot, and while he was in the emergency room at St. Joseph's as well. Abernathy wrote in an autobiography titled "And the Walls Came Tumbling Down," in which he describes the moment he realized that King was dead in the hospital bed. He writes, "The breaths came further and further apart, then a pause came that lengthened until I knew it would never end." So he literally saw King's last breath.
Yeah.
And witnessed him die in the hospital bed. And King was not conscious during this time. We also have information from the doctor who did examine King while he was still technically alive at the hospital, not conscious, but he was there were breaths, so
Yeah.
technically he's alive.
Still alive,
if you
yeah.
even just have a heartbeat, you're still technically alive. So this comes from Dr. Frederick Yoa. He said that Dr. King's trachea and jugular vein were damaged on the impact of the bullet. Then the bullet traveled downward, completely severing his spinal cord.
Oof.
This was corroborated by an autopsy by a medical examiner named Jerry Francisco, who reported that the cause of death was a, quote, gunshot wound to the chin and neck with total transaction of the lower cervical and upper thoracic spinal cord. So exactly, well, like almost exactly word for word what the doctor says. The cause of death was very clear. Now, the information from the coroner, the medical examiner who did the autopsy, that information I got from the House committee that reported on it. So if you do believe that the entire government conspiracized against it in the assassination, like Ray's lawyer claims, I would understand it like if they just don't want to believe that part of the evidence, because like if you are already on the conspiracy boat, you don't really want to hear from the government anyway.
Right.
But it would be difficult to have this many people involved and not have it have come out earlier,
Yeah.
or at least have some evidence, like some real evidence. So far you've got, in order for this to be a conspiracy, you have a huge branching of number of not only different people, but different departments and, from different professions who all have to be keeping this under wraps.
Yeah, no, that would have gotten out somewhere. Someone would have wanted to put that out there.
So we still have the claim that the government was found guilty in the court of law in carrying out King's assassination. This is not entirely true. So in 1999, William Francis Pepper did in fact represent King's family in a wrongful death lawsuit. I know. I know. It's the guy who represented the accused assassin, of course he's wanting to push a narrative that his client was innocent.
Yeah.
I mean that's his job as a
Yeah,
lawyer.
that's what he's supposed to
know?
do. He's supposed to fight for his client.
Yeah, and
whatever.
like even though at this point, Ray's already in jail, and has a life sentence. Like this is 1999, so he's been that was a long time ago that he was put in prison. You know, which he ended up escaping from prison. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
Good for him.
it was very shortly. Oh no, not for the guy who killed Martin. Well, not for the guy who was
Supposedly,
accused of
yeah.
killing
The
Martin
fall
Luther
guy.
King. Yeah, the fall guy in this conspiracy. So he at least didn't William Francis Pepper at least didn't lie about representing the King family at some point. This was, however, a civil case, and the reason why this matters is because there is a much lower burden of proof in a civil case as compared to like a criminal court case. After this civil case was found that the Memphis Cafe owner, the building where the assassination took place, and quote others including government agencies, end of quote, were part of a conspiracy to assassinate Martin Luther King Jr. So the findings did happen in court, but part of a civil case and not a criminal trial, and that does matter. That matters quite a bit because in a criminal trial, you have to like have real proof that something occurred in order to. Well, it's presumably like you have to provide a good amount of evidence that something occurred in order for it to lead to a conviction. Ray was convicted in the court of law, so if that's your burden, if that's your standard of proof, the conviction of Ray in the court is much more convincing than a civil case where somebody was sued. So this is a lawsuit. This isn't actually sending anybody to jail or punishing anybody for it. And the lawsuit, like anytime that you have these civil cases, there's always money involved. And you might be thinking that maybe that was like, cause like Pepper's got a conflict of interest already. But you may think that like maybe the money involved was part of the reason why this was done. And that is actually not entirely true either, but I want to talk about William Francis Pepper a little bit more. So you may find it compelling that they won their civil case. But William Francis Pepper is no stranger to conspiracy. He very famously claimed that there was a second gunman who killed Robert F. Kennedy.
Whoa.
And that Bobby himself was murdered by had a second gunman involved. This is interesting because you hear about the case of John F. Kennedy all the time, and that there was a second gunman in the grassy knoll and all that stuff. And just about if you ever listen to the news regarding any shooting situation, the phrase multiple gunmen gets thrown out irresponsibly all the time. You know, so I had not heard before that Robert F. Kennedy had a second gunman involved in the shooting of him.
I don't remember ever hearing that either.
Yeah, funny. So like, this is a funny little side comment here. My dad always took me to see the movies. We used to go multiple times a week. Like we went to the movies all the time, and we went to see the movie Bobby about the assassination of Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And there's a scene where Sirhan comes in through the door, and it plays this like D minor music, you know.
Oh, sure.
Like you don't even have to know what Sirhan looked like in order to know that that's who it's supposed to be, you know.
Okay.
Because like it's a very obvious scene, and as that scene happened, the guy behind me, he's leaned way back. He looks like super douchey. He's leaned way back and he's got his arm around his girlfriend. He leans over to her and he goes, "Lee Harvey Oswald."
Yep, nailed it.
Yeah.
He knows his history.
You got it. You got it, dude. God, that was good. It was such a funny moment.
Oh, and I hope she left him
God.
after that movie.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how smart she was, but I mean, even at that age, I knew better. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, You out of your mind?
Turn around and look at him and be like, "What did you just say?"
You gotta be fucking kidding, right? So anyway, I just thought that was a funny thing, and I wanted to mention it since we're talking about Robert Kennedy anyway. As reported in the Washington Post, and in fact by Dr. Pecker himself, he's giving delicious soda a bad name, by the way.
It really is. Yeah.
Like Dr. Pepper's delicious. I wish that they'd make the diet caffeine-free version more available, because I don't drink the drinks with sugar, and I don't drink drinks with caffeine. And Diet Dr. Pepper's is actually delicious, and the caffeine-free one is so hard to find. Anyway, not to go on about soda.
If you ever get famous, you're gonna get a ton of cases of caffeine-free Diet Dr.
Oh,
Pepper.
that'd be kind of amazing actually, because I love it. But I'm also this is stupid. But I also have given up dark drinks.
Okay.
So I only drink clear drinks now.
Why?
Because of teeth, like just staining the
stains?
teeth up.
Oh, okay.
So now I don't drink dark drinks anymore. That's why I wish that they had a diet caffeine-free crystal Dr. Pepper. That's what I want.
Now you're getting specific. Yeah.
Don't tell me it's too esoteric. Make those things for me, God damn it.
Just take a day, run that for all day, and sell it. You'll have at least one customer here, guaranteed.
Yeah, heck yeah.
As long as it gets to.
I drank the hell out of that.
Advertise it as an online-only sale.
I think part of the reason why the Crystal Pepsi comeback didn't work is because they didn't offer a diet version of it.
Could be, yeah.
Because if you think about it, the best part about Crystal Pepsi, it just tastes like regular Pepsi. The best part about it is that they don't use the dye in there, and people who are going to avoid that are probably avoiding the sugar as well.
Yeah.
So it's a gimmick that the trend wasn't going to last. But if they have a diet version, I bet that would last. I would drink it. Well,
Probably.
It'd have to be caffeine free as well.
He's not going to drink it. Don't waste your time, Pepsi.
Yeah, no, don't. If it has caffeine in it, I won't.
He's going to nitpick about something.
Oh God, but
the label's blue. I can't drink it.
The label's blue. No, it's there's probably none of these have a blue label. Okay, that one's purple. I drank that. Dr. Pepper believes that the man who assassinated Bobby Kennedy was programmed. Lee Harvey Oswald. That's right. Yeah. Sir Lee Harvey Oswald Hahn. But Sirhan Sirhan, he believes that the man who assassinated Bobby Kennedy was programmed by hypnosis to fire a gun.
Cool.
So he thinks that Sirhan Sirhan was programmed by hypnosis to fire a gun, not to kill Robert Kennedy, but as a distraction from the real gunman. Now this gunman escaped, and we don't know who he is, so don't worry about that.
Oh no, I wasn't worried about that.
But it sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't it kind of sound like
a little bit
how they're using Ray as a scapegoat, and that really he's not an actual assassin, and that he was assassinated by somebody else. Mm-hmm. So to be fair, conspiracy theorists out there, rather, I don't automatically disbelieve something just because it's a conspiracy. In fact, this is okay. So to continue giving the conspiracy more fuel here, there was a Harvard Medical School professor who is credited as an expert in hypnosis, who claimed that Sirhan Sirhan didn't act on his own will. But we can be here all day while I talk about whether or not hypnosis is real. It's not. There's no evidence for it. And in fact, Harvard has ended all their programs studying hypnosis because it's the same thing as studying ghosts or something else. Mm-hmm. Until there's actual a shred of evidence for it, there's no reason to believe this crap.
Right.
But the conspiracies don't end there. Nope. Pecker is also a proponent of 9/11 conspiracy.
Oh, boy.
So that doesn't prove that he's lying about anything. You can't prove a negative anyway. But he has demonstrated a fanship of conspiracy theories. So he can't wait to harp on conspiracies. And so This case has a lot of branching information, and there's no way we can cover it all. And I will completely admit that there are unanswered questions. In fact, the author on the subject, named Hampton Sized, who was able to do a lot more research than I had the time for, and probably has much better resources, and is an expert in studying this kind of thing. He wrote a book called Hellbound on His Trail, which is about James Earl Ray, his assassination of MLK, and his subsequent escape from jail. It's a fascinating subject, but let's read a direct quote from this author. He said, "The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. is a tale of many legitimate mysteries and unanswered questions. The cause of his death is not one of them." That seems pretty definitive there.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. But there's more to this meme than that.
Mm-hmm.
If he was unconscious and dying, why does he look so alert in the photo?
Yeah, his eyes were very open. He was looking right at the camera.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
he knew what was going on.
He was posing for that picture.
Yeah.
So this photo is in fact a picture of Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in fact taken after he had been attempted to be assassinated. And he is in fact very conscious and alert in the photo. So what gives? What's going on here? If the assassination in Memphis caused him to be unconscious and dying, he shouldn't look alert in the photo.
Right.
The problem is that this wasn't the first assassination attempt on Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And this was not taken on the date that he died. In fact, this photo was taken on September 20th, 1958. On September 20th, 1958, a 42-year-old woman named Isola Wade Curry stabbed Martin Luther King during a book signing of his because she thought he was a secret member of the Communist Party who was trying to brainwash her. And that he was secretly communicating with her and essentially trying to reprogram her. After she stabbed him, King was taken to the Harlem hospital and ended up having to go 2 hours of surgery. He was very close to death. In fact, the way the doctors referred to it, they said he could have died from a sneeze.
Wow.
So that's how severely injured he was. That photo was taken of him at the hospital after his life had been saved, not after he had been shot by Ray. So if you want to read into the early assassination attempt, you can go to kinginstitute.sanford.edu and read the page about Isola Curry. So now, to demonstrate what an incredible, invaluable, and strong and amazing human being Dr. King was, I want to read a quote from him after he very nearly died. And this is about the person who tried to kill him. He said, "I am deeply sorry that a deranged woman should have injured herself in seeking to injure me. I can say in all sincerity that I bear no bitterness toward her and that I feel no resentment from the sad moment that the experience occurred. I know that we want her to receive the necessary treatment so that she may become a constructive citizen and in an integrated society where a disorganized personality need not become a menace to any man."
Wow.
Holy
What a
shit!
guy. This lady just stabbed him, and he's like, "Oh, I hope she gets the help."
He was one sneeze from death.
He almost died. Like,
And
well, I
when
hope she's okay.
when he recovered, he felt bad for her because she injured herself trying to kill him.
Yeah.
It's insane. That's an insane dedication to love. And the fact that a person existed like this is exactly the reason why we can't allow grifters like Pepper to take advantage of his legacy, and to get ahead of people who will argue about the money involved. Like, oh well, he didn't sue them for money. Do you know I want you to guess how much money that they sued for during the civil suit.
I don't know.
$1.
Oh, okay.
$1. So they sued for $1.
Yeah.
And the point people want to make is that he wasn't looking for money when he did this. He wanted the truth to come out.
Yeah.
But Pepper's not a dumb guy at all. He knows the value of winning, quote, a case like this, especially with such a high profile. The revenue is going to come from his ability to ride on this conspiracy, this somehow confirmation on this wild claim that he has made.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extraordinary claim, and he needed this civil case in order to try to convince more people that it's true. And if you think about it, the $1 suing for $1, part of the reason, like the ostensible reason, the one that he would give would be like, well, I wasn't looking for money. The family wasn't looking for money. We just want the truth to come out.
Yeah.
So that's why we only sued for $1. Imagine that you are on that jury,
mm-hmm.
and the trial lasted for 30 days. Imagine that you're on that jury, and they're making this extraordinary claim, but nobody's going to jail. Nobody's getting charged with any criminal suits or anything, and they're not going to lose any significant amount of money. They're only suing for $1.
Right.
Just say, yeah, sure, and go home.
Yeah.
You know, like if it had been a huge lawsuit, you know, if they sued for, you know, like $100 million or a few $100 million, something like that, then there would be more deliberation on it. And in the clip I showed you, she even said it took them less than an hour to make their decision. And the reason is because there were no stakes. There were no stakes in this case.
Yeah.
So that's probably the real reason why he only sued for $1, or why he wanted to represent the family but have them only sue for $1. That is probably the real reason why he did that, is to lower the rate limiting factor of getting people to believe this insane conspiracy. So now he can say, well, they were found, you know, this all was found to be true in court and blah 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 blah. Like, you know, if he words it right, he's not lying. But there was a low burden of proof, and basically he just had to convince the jury, and there were no stakes.
Yeah.
So, like, citing this court case as evidence of it being true is nonsensical. It doesn't actually support this thing. If anything that he claims to be true, it would be extremely important to know. If the wrong person went to prison for supposedly killing one of the greatest American heroes that we've had in recent history, if that were true, it would be important to know. But what is also terrible is the fact that these lies are continuing to be spread,
mm-hmm.
and he's grifting on Martin Luther King's legacy just because he knew the guy. So, no, I can't prove the conspiracy theories aren't true. That's impossible. That is a unfortunate source of the resilience of conspiracy theories, is that you can't prove a negative.
Yeah.
But the evidence that I can find has not convinced me that any of these claims in this meme are true, or any of the conspiracy parts of the meme are true. Like, I just can't buy it. I'm not convinced by this. So, Bobby, do you have any closing thoughts? What do you think? Do you think that Martin Luther King was actually suffocated by a doctor?
No, it doesn't sound like it. Did anybody actually talk to that doctor? Like, I don't remember hearing you mention his name. What was it, Dr. Rand or something like that?
Yeah. So
Talked
there were
about him in the video. But...
there were two doctors that were mentioned. So there were two doctors that were mentioned. So the conspiracy starts getting spread around that somebody at the hospital suffocated him, and then you've got Dr. Pecker claiming that this doctor suffocated him. they blamed Dr. Greenbland, chief neurosurgeon at St. Joseph Hospital. I don't think, like, I didn't find a whole lot of, like, direct quotes from him. Like, obviously, if he had been interrogated or whatever, he would deny that occurred.
Right.
And the person who did work on Dr. King in the hospital did call his cause of death and everything. And in fact, King's friend was there to witness Dr. King's last breaths.
Right.
So, like, the idea that this doctor who was accused had anything to do with it is already not corroborated by the evidence. So, one unfortunate thing here, and I didn't mention this, but I did find in a list of comments on this subject from some of the posts, like on Facebook and on Twitter. Some of the comments on the subject, like most of the comments tend to be, and on YouTube as well, most of the comments tend to be supportive of this conspiracy theory. They tend to believe what's being said. Okay. And I did see a comment on the YouTube video, the one that I showed you, that said that that they had found out that they only lived like 3 hours or something from Dr. Bland's grave, and they went to spit on it. So, like, because they believed the conspiracy that Dr. Bland actually suffocated him, and that a group of nurses and doctors all started spitting on Dr. King's body. Like, they believed all the story. So Dr. Bland, it says he died in 2001, according to Find a Grave. It's very unfortunate that that's one of the first things that comes up when you search him, because the people are looking for it to desecrate it in the name of something that's probably not true. In the first place. I don't know if Dr. Bland was a good person or not. I have no fucking idea. He could have been terrible. He could have been a monster, and that's why he was easy to blame for the situation.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that most of this are lies about him. About him actually suffocating Dr. King. But I don't know. He died in 2001. This lawsuit happened in 1999, so there's a good chance that he was, very old and maybe not even capable of communicating or testifying during that. Okay. But, this is the thing I was going to say. But if you look, it just says for the actual lawsuit, it says that the Memphis cafe owner and, quote, others including government agencies were part of a conspiracy to assassinate MLK. It didn't find a civil suit viable against Dr. Bland or against the Memphis hospital either. The case only mentions the cafe owner and, quote, others including government agencies.
Okay.
So, like, it's not true, Like, you can dig into the evidence all day, and there's nothing supporting this case except for the testimony of the person who represented the accused assassin in the first place. Like, you cannot take this at face value.
Yeah.
Until somehow somebody comes up with some really extraordinary evidence, I'm not convinced.
Yeah.
I know that was a bummer.
Yeah.
But
well, the whole thing's a bummer. I mean, somebody killed Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, and it's horrible to think about.
One of the best people around.
Yeah.
And we got all these awful people out there, and they're just running around living their best life. Nobody's shooting those idiots. But they take somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. who's trying to make the world a better place, and somebody fucking killed him.
Yeah. It's miserable to think about. It really is. But I want to thank everybody for listening to this. Whether or not it maybe probably didn't put you in a good mood, except for maybe a few jokes here and there. But Thank you guys all so much for listening. And if there are any other memes or meme trends that you want me to cover, please let me know. You can submit memes on x.com at meaninglesspod. And meaningless is, well, if you're listening to this, you had to find it. So you already know how to spell meaningless. But meaningless is MEMINGLESS pod with no underscore or anything. Because sometimes memes are meaningless. Thank you guys so much for listening. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.